Well, welcome to the Patriot Feed. This morning we got Dr. Dondi Costin, the 6th president of Liberty University, and I've actually known all 6 of them. Okay. You grew up in Wilmington, North Carolina, a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy, transferred to the Chaplain Corps in 1996, served a distinguished 32-year career in the Air Force, retiring as a Major General in 2018, Chief of Chaplains, leading over 2,000 chaplains across the Air Force, earned 5 degrees, 2 doctorates, or 5 master's degrees, 2 doctorates, including from Southern Seminary and Liberty University, served as the president of Charleston Southern for a long period of time, 2018 to 2023, committed to Liberty's mission of training champions for Christ through academic excellence and spiritual development, married to Vicki Costin. Man, President Costin, it's an honor to have you here today.
Honor's mine. Thanks for the invitation.
So what first inspired you, or what was the calling as a young person or older person as far as following Christ and country?
I was very blessed to be born into a Christian family. My mom was a Christian. My dad was a Christian when they met. Both of them came from really abject poverty, but they didn't know it. You know, that all they knew was they had what they needed, and their parents loved them, and the Lord loved them. And so they were raised as a Christian family. And so the blessing of my life was I was born into that family. And so I was, as we say, I was attending church 9 months before I was born. And then at age 7, I understood I was a sinner in need of a Savior, and that Jesus Christ was the only way to salvation. And at Lake Forest Baptist Church in Wilmington, North Carolina, I walked the aisle. I was sitting next to my grandmother, and my parents were in the choir. And so I walked in the aisle and said, I need to be saved. And so that was it. Yeah, I was fortunate to be blessed and born in that family.
That is fantastic. I was fortunate as well. My dad served in the Army Air Corps in World War II. And
yeah, I did see your cufflink.
Yeah.
So very good.
And I always asked him, I said, what was it like growing up through the Great Depression? He said, well, he didn't know. We had a subsistence farm.
Yeah. Yeah, when I asked my dad, so my dad was born in 1936.
Okay.
They didn't have a bathroom in the house, that kind of thing. And his dad died when my dad was 2. And so my father was really raised in the Depression by a single mom. He was the youngest of 4. And so when he was about 10, my grandmother had to farm out the other kids and take the baby to Wilmington, to town, so she could work in a shirt factory. And so to hear, he was like most in his generation. He didn't talk much, but when asked, he would say, "Yeah, I remember it was a good day if we had cereal. We never had milk, but we had cereal, and we would just put water on the cereal so we could have something to eat." That kind of existence is really foreign to me. It's not foreign to many in the world, but it's foreign to me. And so just so grateful that my parents were Christ followers who kept going, despite difficulty, they just kept going.
When you see those kind of things and hear those stories, people today, the young kids of today, they never think that's even possible. So hearing those stories and watching how we grow up without things how do you do it without a phone? How do you do it without these things?
Yeah.
And back then they really fixated on what was truly essential.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. And I think, one of the, as much as I love modern technology, as much as I love having an iPhone, as much as it helps, I think in many ways, my childhood, my adolescence, my high school years, my college years, because all of that season of my life, there were no cell phones, there was no Wi-Fi, there was no internet, there was none of that, which forced us to be more face-to-face than I think we are today. Even if you're a bookworm, the conversations you had, the friendships you had really were face to face. Growing up in the neighborhood, I suspect my neighborhood was like yours. My mom would let me watch TV, and you go outside, and I don't want to see you back. And when the street lights come on, then you come back in. Well, that's a different kind of upbringing than most people have today. And
But what an enriching upbringing, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. I mean, it was awesome, and in some respects, I wish the internet had never been invented. I wish the iPhone had never been invented. Yes, our lives would have been incredibly more challenging, but we somehow survived.
Yeah. Do you think about the creativity that you had? You didn't have the toy.
Yeah,
You had to have a stick for your gun, or you
yeah,
played flashlight tag or
sure.
made up games. And
Yeah, yeah, we had one that we played in the summertime, and this game went on for hours and hours and hours. We called it, Springview Team Tag. That was our neighborhood, and we'd divide up into groups of 3 or 4, and we would just say, "Go. Your team is it, your team is not," and we would run for a couple of hours, and that was the game.
wow,
Yeah.
we had TV tag. We had
Yeah.
flashlight. So what?
Yeah.
Flashlight tag at night.
Yeah.
Now you can't be out at night. Now kids can't even walk to the school bus a block
Sure.
away, let alone to school.
Yeah, sure, sure. Yeah.
Yeah, these which we'll get to a little bit later, but C.S. Lewis talked about men with chests
Yeah.
and the heart.
Yeah.
So sounds like you had a fantastic upbringing.
I think I did. Again, I was blessed, but by the parents I had and the church community I had and the neighborhood.
So then how did you go to what was the calling or to go to the Air Force Academy?
I didn't really have a plan. Neither of my parents had gone to college, and so really it wasn't something we talked about at home. It just never came up. There was never a conversation we had about going to college because neither of them did. My dad owned a small floor covering business, and so in the summertime, I was his gopher, and so I'd go for this and go for that. But I played just like every other kid that I knew. I played football in the fall and basketball in the winter and baseball in the spring. And there were no travel teams, there was no specializing. You had to play all three, which I think was really good. And then one day my high school guidance counselor called me in and she said, if you're the valedictorian of your class, in most cases you go to college. And I said, okay, I hadn't thought much about it, but tell me more about that. And so we had that conversation. And as it turns out, I went to North Carolina Boys State between my junior and senior years of high school, and there was an Air Force Academy cadet there, a rising senior, who was from North Carolina. He was there for a 3 or 4 week program, and his job was to recruit people like me. And so after a room full of 1,000, there was a Coast Guard Academy recruiter and an Air Force Academy recruiter, both current cadets. They said, if you want to serve your country and get a free education, why don't you come down to the front afterwards? And there were probably a dozen of us who went down to the front. And he said 2 things: one that interested me, one that I'm sure what was going to interest my mother. The first thing he said was, "You want to serve your country?" I said, "Yeah, I actually would. I don't know what that means exactly, but I would like to serve my country. At least want to hear more about it, and a free education." So I said, "Well, I don't have any money as it is, so I'm sure that my mother will be very interested
Okay.
in that second part." And so I was interested in the first part, serving the country. At 17, what do you know? And then my mom was interested in the free education. So that began a process of filling out all the paperwork, getting the physicals, doing the physical fitness test, all those things. And by the time that the acceptance came, I said, "Well, it's been such a pain to be accepted. I'm going to go. I'd never been on an airplane before. I'm going to go and see how it goes." And I just didn't leave.
You mentioned about the physical fitness. It's sad that now 75% of military age boys, men, can't even pass because of either their criminal record, because they can't do the basic physical fitness. They haven't
Yeah.
finished high school. 75%.
Yeah, it's not something I think, thought about in previous generations. What we do think about today is that with an all-volunteer military, It is a national security issue if teenagers are out of shape.
And these are teenagers. They're not someone like you running in the mountains or an old
Sure.
guy like me still, trying to be in the gym.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, so it is a national security thing, and so I saw recently, I think I saw recently that, President Trump, is thinking about bringing back the presidential physical fitness test in high schools. Well, that's a good idea, and, we're not asking middle schoolers to be thinking about going to the military, but what we do want is them to have that option, whether it's to go to college and do an Air Force or Army ROTC, Naval ROTC as well, any of those, or simply to join right out of high school to go to the military. Again, it's a national security matter, and I think it's a good idea.
Growing up, I think I had a similar experience. My folks, my dad graduated from 8th grade. They grew up on subsistence
Yeah.
of dairy farms in
Yeah.
Minnesota. And when I said I wanted to go to college, the first, I'm the baby of 8 kids, and they said, "Why would you go to college?
Yeah.
You're not working, so you're not making money." So I understood
Yeah.
the opportunity cost that we were talking about in
Yeah, yeah.
economics. And they also said, "You got to pay for it." I wrestled, so wrestling paid for some, which was nice.
Yeah.
But I wanted to continue, and I wanted to get a degree in finance and continue
Right.
my sport of wrestling. And after I went, it was they then told the grandkids, "You gotta go to college." And so it changed their mindset.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think there's a lot of conversation today in our culture
The other way.
about the value of college. What's the value of college? Is it worth it? And so, but by many measures, it is worth it. It's worth it if all you knew was financially. The average college graduate over the course of their working life is going to make $1 million more than one who doesn't. It doesn't happen in every case, but certainly on average that happens. But even more importantly, what does it mean to have in our case, a Christian liberal arts education where we help you to become a better citizen? What does the country need today? Really good citizens. We need patriots. We need people who are patriotic. We need people who understand conservative principles. We need people who understand how biblical conservatism impacts political conservatism. We need that. And so at a college, if that's how the Lord leads you, and most people don't go to college, but if the Lord leads you to college, what we focus on, we're gonna teach you about God. We're gonna teach you about conservative principles. We're gonna teach you about the fact that you've been made in God's image and that He has a plan and a purpose for you, and that your job as a champion for Christ is then to go in your sphere of influence and make a difference, make an impact in that sphere, wherever that sphere may be. We're gonna teach you how to be a critical thinker, how to be a problem solver, all of those things, how to be resilient, how to understand how spirituality and your faith impacts your thought process and your physical body, and all of that comes together. And so, yeah, it's valuable materially, sure, but even more than that, it sets you up for a much different kind of future, and much different kind of impact than you'll have if you decide not to go to college.
Yeah, and the people that you meet.
Yeah, yeah,
What
you probably have friends from college that you're still like this with, and so do I.
and the people that you meet, like at Liberty, their convocation.
Yeah,
We had Oliver North, his
sure.
first time speaking, we're
Sure.
our first graduate speaker, graduation speaker. The second one was sitting President George Bush,
Okay.
and you had all of these people that Dr. Falwell had
Yeah.
brought in, and what it you
Yeah.
remember those impacts.
It's amazing. Yeah, I have a picture taken with Oliver North in Afghanistan, so I have that photo. And then when I graduated from the Air Force Academy, President George H.W. Bush was the commencement speaker.
Is he the senior, or
as
which one is which
the
is the gun?
senior.
That's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
look at my second graduate.
George the first. All right, well, yeah, George the first.
The king?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So when I graduated from the Air Force Academy, Vice President George H.W. Bush came and spoke at commencement.
Nice.
And then when I graduated with my first degree from Liberty in 1990, he spoke at
So
that
how
commencement.
was that the same graduation?
Absolutely.
I've got my MBA at that one.
Yeah,
So-
and I've got an MA in counseling there. So in my office, I have a pretty extensive coin collection, as you might imagine. But in this special box that I got at my Air Force retirement is a book is a button that says, "I graduated with George Bush, 1990s." You probably have.
I never got that. I need that.
Well, I don't want you taking mine,
Yeah.
but I certainly want you to see it sometime.
Well, the small it is neat having Charlie Kirk talked about having conversations with people you never know, and these things that
Yeah.
I've appreciated your leadership and seeing you around at every field hockey game and every
Sure.
event.
Yeah.
You're always there, but to know
Yeah.
those kind of things is pretty neat. So, what got you into being the chaplain?
Yeah, I was probably called to the chaplaincy in high school, to the ministry in high school, but, I was scared to death, and, I'll underline in bold those words. Scared to death of the very thought of speaking in public. And so I had a hard time giving a book report in high school. I have a hard time speaking, when it came time for the valedictory speech in my high school. The way they did it, they only picked people who applied to be the speaker. I was a valedictorian. I did not apply to be the speaker. I did not want to be the speaker. I did not want to be asked to be the speaker. And so I said, I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but I've been to church a bunch of times. And if you're a preacher, you have to stand in front of people and talk. Therefore, I'm not doing it. And so I was like, this is pretty easy. I don't know what I'm going to do, but really, in God's providence, He sent me to the Air Force Academy, and just the way I got there with no background whatsoever, He sent me to the Air Force Academy for the purpose of setting me up for whatever is going to be next. And so when I was already a second lieutenant, I was serving as an industrial engineer in the Air Force, and I had a renewed sense of calling to go into the ministry. And for me, it was an immediate call, undeniable call to be an Air Force chaplain. And this happened, as many things do. This call happened while I was running. And so for me, that's meditation time, it's prayer time, it's alone time, it's all of that. And so it was I didn't hear an audible voice, but it may as well have been. God may as well have been on the street corner with a bullhorn saying, "I want you to do this, and this time you can't say no." And so as I'm running, the Lord brings to my mind, again, as if He was telling me this with an audible voice. He takes me to Exodus chapters 3 and 4, where Moses is using the exact same excuses I was using. And God is very gracious. He says, "No problem, Moses, I'll take care of that one." And Moses comes up with another one. "No problem, I'll take care of that one." And at the end of that litany of excuses, Moses basically says, "Listen, Lord, I'm not doing it. I don't I don't know what part of no you're not understanding, but I'm not doing it." And God says, "Oh, yes, you are. You're gonna do it." And so basically, we'll do this the easy way or the hard way. And He says, your brother Aaron could even go with you and speak. Now, what we see in Scripture is that Moses eventually said yes, and Aaron never had to speak for him. And so Moses got what he needed from the Lord to do it. And God said to me, if I can do that for Moses, and he basically said, "This is not my first rodeo. I don't know who you think you are, but I'm God, you're not, and I want you to do this. That's all you have to know. And so quit your belly aching and just get going." That's what led me to Liberty University. So I go into this happened in November of 1987. I go into the youth pastor's office of the church I was attending as a second lieutenant, and I said, "Man, I feel like I've been called to the ministry, called to be a chaplain, but I live here in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. There's no internet. I didn't even know the word, nor did he." And I said, "I don't know how I'm going to do this because I have a commitment to the Air Force, and I just don't know how I'm going to get the education I need to be a chaplain, because you had to have 96 semester hour program
For your
plus 2 years of
yeah.
and plus 2 years of experience." And he opens his drawer and he pulls out a Liberty University School of Lifelong Learning brochure. So this was the predecessor to Liberty University Online. And he says, "I'm not going to be needing this, but maybe you will." Wow. And so I took this brochure, and it was as if God had written this brochure for me. It was as if God had inspired Dr. Falwell in 1985, just 2 years prior, to start Liberty University School of Lifelong Learning, the predecessor, the precursor to Liberty University Online. And so I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is a miracle," because it had exactly what I needed. And I said, if I'm going to be a chaplain, I'm certainly going to have to do some counseling. And so, Master of Arts in Counseling, by extension, accredited by the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, which meant that the Air Force would pay for it. So I was like, "Great, let's go, giddy up." And so that was the first master's degree, and the second, I was able to get in residence because we were stationed over in Hampton, Virginia, at Langley Air Force Base. And while over there, I came and took about a dozen modulars, intensives, 1-week courses, back in the day. And so God used all kinds of people, all kinds of ways to get me. After I said yes, He took care of every other detail, as He always does.
What's nice too to hear and be reminded, I think of that as how people in politics work or in lots of positions. The people that are elbowing their way and saying, I want to do it, are
Yeah,
sometimes the people that maybe the way God had set it up to say, I want you to do it. No.
yeah,
And they say no because
yeah,
they feel unworthy, but that's what
sure.
God wants is people that are unworthy
Yeah.
and He can build up. So that's a neat story.
Yeah, that's right, and I think a good bit of that is, if, it happens in every area of your life, if you think you are doing something, then you give yourself the credit.
Absolutely.
If you know that you don't have the power to do something and the thing gets done, the only answer is that God has worked through you and God gets the credit. So I think that's the difference.
What was the spiritual temperature like in the Air Force when you were still there as a chaplain?
Yeah, it changed, as society changed. For the most part, military people tend to be more conservative than the population at large, just the way it's always been, which is no surprise if you understand sort of how the military works. Yeah, I joined the military in 1982 and I retired in 2018. So a lot happened. A lot happened
Changes.
culturally, religiously, sociologically, all kinds of changes. So I'll just fast forward to the time that I was the Air Force Chief of Chaplains, and there'd been a period in the Air Force that commanders and others got afraid of religion. They were being sued, they were being, posted on social media, and they were talking about all the separation of church and state, all those kinds of things. And so what we found is that people, although most, at least at the time, most people really were religious people, and most of them Christian, they got afraid to talk about it. And so when I became chief of chaplains, I said we have to do everything we can to fix this. And so I said I said if you don't like the fact that this 3,000-year-old book, which is continues to be the bestseller in all of history, even this year it will be the bestseller around the world. If you don't like the fact that this book, which contains all kinds of principles for your flourishing, that living by this book is going to give you the kind of life that's going to make you a better kind of person, etc., and have you live your purpose and meaning. I said, if you don't like that, you think that's too religious. All right, what about this? What if I told you that the data, and there are thousands of academic studies done every single year that point to the benefits of religion, not nominal religion, but devout religion on health. Health physically, spiritually, relationally, professionally, every area of your life. If you're a devout person of faith, you are going to be better, and it's incontrovertible, the data. And so I said, okay, if you don't want me standing there with a cross on my chest, they knew who I was, and I got to say Jesus, as much often as I wanted to. And so if you don't like that, if you don't think that's this ancient truth is going to work because it's not culturally appropriate. I mean, what about this? What if I told you that this mound of data, you say that you're not anti-science, right? You're not anti-science? Well, good. Here's a pile of data, science, that tells you that religion is good for you. And if you're a commander, religion is also good for your troops. What are you asking people to do, commander? You're asking people to put themselves in harm's way for the good of the nation. And all this data says that kind of person, the kind of person who understands the difference in the temporary life and eternal life, they're going to be a better soldier. They're going to be a better sailor, a better airman. And so my entire theme as chief of chaplains was sort of going through the side door. And so the theme was faith works. faith works. And so we would bring, just as an example, we have there's a guy, a Christian at Duke. Now I'm a Carolina fan. I'm a Duke hater, but he's the one reason that I'm okay with Duke. Dr. Harold Koenig, and he's done tons of research his entire career. Although he's a gerontological psychiatrist, his hobby, professional hobby, has been collating data and conducting research on the benefits of faith on health. And so he partners also with a guy named Tyler Vanderwill, who's a professor at Harvard in their School of Public Health. Well, we had them come to our leadership conference when I was chief of chaplains and talk about this, because I wanted these chaplains and chaplain assistants to go back to their units and say, you don't have to be afraid of religion. Oh, by the way, there is a First Amendment, and the First Amendment is first for a reason. It's not a coincidence that the very First Amendment has to do with the free exercise of religion, and it's good for you. And so this Tyler Vanderwill, the professor at Harvard, he wrote an op-ed in October of 2016 in USA Today that sort of was a very brief synopsis of the concept. And it might be the best title of any op-ed that's ever been written. And the title of the op-ed was this: Religion May Be a Miracle Drug. So if you look at the effects on a population level of those who are devout in their faith and those who are not, there is a statistically significant difference in every area of your life. And if you've been raised in a church, this doesn't surprise you, because you're bringing generations, multiple generations. Where else does this happen? Multiple generations of people, old people, widowed people, young people, single parents, disabilities, vocational problems, money problems. All these people from all sectors of society, they come to the same place every week, couple times a week. And in this multi-generational context, you study the Word of God. You get to know who God is based on the word that he has given to us. And you see, no surprise, that the God who designed you to live, if you live consistent with his design, it's not a surprise to anybody that you're going to flourish. Well, hello, this is not hard to understand. And it's not just from the Word of God, but it's from stacks and stacks of science. And so
And he framed it as a miracle drug.
a miracle drug, yeah. I mean, if you had the cure to pick any disease, and if I had this miracle drug, would you at least consider it? Yes. And so that's what I would say to commanders. Why would you withhold from your troops something that is so demonstrably good for them? Why would you do that? And there's no good answer.
So that you kind of jump ahead of my next question, which was, how do you go from the military, where you
Yeah.
have command, to academia? But it sounds like what you did as the chaplain, the chief of chaplains, was using like academia does.
That's right.
Saying, let's come into the conversation.
That's right.
Here's the facts. Here's the logic. Here's the science. Here's the data.
Exactly.
So maybe that wasn't as difficult as I was thinking of it. I thought, how do you go from the military, where the private first classes aren't sitting around the water cooler thinking, hey, maybe we can empower our sergeant to be a little bit nicer.
Yeah.
Maybe he had a bad day.
Yeah.
You follow orders.
That's right.
Academia, you got everybody that's got their own, their terminal degree. They've studied, they critically read, they have to be convinced.
Yeah.
So
Well, at the
you
end of
don't really have to help me much with that, but I'd love to hear
No, yeah.
the next chapter of going into academia.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, leadership is fundamentally about mission. And there are different kinds of leaders. There are dictatorial kinds, there's collaborative kinds, and no leadership style is necessarily right or wrong. You got to understand your audience. You got to lead through your own personality, of course. But leadership is about mission. So whatever way you use as a leader to inspire people to the mission, that's the difference. And so in the military, it's killing people and breaking things. I mean, it's how do we take an objective? How do we preserve national security? How do we prepare for something that we hope never happens? No military person loves war. yeah, if they're ready for war, and if war happens, they all want to go because that's what they've trained to do. But no military person loves war. But it happens, and you got to be ready for that. So when it came time for Vicky and I to think about what was next after the military, we loved it. And the only reason we left is they said you can't get promoted anymore, and you have to leave. I mean, like what? Why are you making me leave? I'm still young. I'm so energetic and so tough. You have to leave, and so somebody else can do it. I was like, bummer. So I went home and I said to Vicky, all right, we have to leave eventually. We got to think of something else. And she was more upset than I was that we had to retire. But what we thought about was what are the things that we loved about the military? What are the things we loved about the chaplaincy, and specifically because Vicky was a partner in this as well. And what we loved was the fact that most of the military are 18 to 22-year-olds who are trying to find their way in life. And so we said, where else can we go and do that and kind of help guide, inspire as the Lord would lead those 18 to 22-year-olds who have and most of them, thank God, have a long life ahead of them to have impact for the kingdom of God. Where can we go do that? And so, we did the Venn diagrams. We thought about all the options, and we said, well, why don't we just see about Christian higher education? Now, my assumption was that, I got a PhD a few years prior because I wanted to be prepared for whatever. My assumption was that maybe I would go be a professor someplace. It really wasn't, to be a president. But as I professionally started thinking about, well, what are the things I liked about the last few jobs I've had? It was leading a team of high caliber men and women to lead others toward a mission that makes a difference in the world. And so I was like, all right, maybe I'll just try to apply to be a president and see what happens. And so I told the board of trustees and the search committee before them at Charleston Southern, I said, I don't know what kind of crazy person would pick an Air Force chaplain to be your president, but this is on you. And so they said, okay, we want you to be our president, and I said, thank God. And it was a phenomenal 5 years. People ask me, and without those 5 years, I certainly wouldn't be here. People ask me, is there really that big of a difference in the military and higher education? And you mentioned a way that it is a slightly different. But if you take the organizational chart of any military unit, certainly a large military unit like an Air Force wing, and you lay it over top of higher education, it is identical. Everything that we do, we have a big, cumbersome bureaucracy that has all kinds of government agencies in our chili all the time, checking on us and keeping us accountable for compliance and this and that. Everything. So when I got to Charleston Southern, I'd read a bunch of books about higher ed. I taught Air Force ROTC for 4 years at Texas Christian University while I was finishing my MDiv at Southwestern Seminary. But I was a faculty member and a recruiter. I wasn't a higher ed leader at that point. But if you overlay this, it's exactly the same. So when I got to Charleston Southern, I would say to people my first few weeks, I would say, no, tell me again what your job is. And I would say, use English words. All right. And so they would say, and in my mind, I would say, okay, so in the Air Force, that would be this, or that would be a that. And then I would say to myself, okay, I know what you do, because there is a direct parallel in the Air Force. Yeah. So it really isn't that much different. And at the end of the day, whether you're a military leader or a leader in civilian life, your job as a leader is to use whatever tools you have through your personality to inspire those people to the mission. And some people, they need a kick in the backside, and so they need the master sergeant to kick them in the backside. But other people, they need to be cared for. They need to be loved. As we say in the military, if you take care of the people, they'll take care of the mission. But both are important, but you focus on the people and then take care of the mission, because they're the ones who are going to be doing it anyway.
And I imagine from the leadership standpoint, looking down, they may be very similar, as you said.
Yeah,
But looking up, I would say it probably still is fairly different from because the sergeant doesn't debate
it is.
with the lieutenant.
It is. Yeah.
All the faculty are trained to be critical thinkers, hopefully.
Yeah,
And they
they are.
their life kind of
Yeah.
debating and arguing about things.
That's right.
So they don't want to just hear the president say, you must do this.
That's right.
And so it's really incumbent upon the president, the leader, the leadership to really pull them in, and I think a little different facet.
No, and I think you're right. And so if you're a dean of a college, let's say, for instance, a dean of a college or a school at Liberty, on the organizational chart, you look like you're a squadron commander, but you have to use a different leadership style than a typical squadron commander could use. A fighter pilot squadron commander, in most cases, is going to have a different leadership style than the dean of the College of Health Sciences, for instance. And so, but that's part of leadership. Understanding who you are, understanding the tools you have, understanding what it takes to motivate the people that you've been called to motivate, and inspired. Because at the end of the day, the dean's job is to make sure that the faculty are accomplishing the mission. And the faculty, we love faculty because they love students. They love their discipline. They're very good at it, but they love students, and they have. I wish I could spend every hour of my day with students. Unfortunately, I can't. I try to do as much as I'm able to. But a faculty member, that's where the difference is made. You had a wrestling coach, and so the wrestling coach has a role.
Just passed away.
Yeah, no, my condolences to you. He certainly was a legend.
And he never wrestled.
Okay,
It was interesting. Yeah, no, you're talking about being a
yeah, it is.
trainer of
Yeah.
chaplains.
Yeah,
And say it like me saying, "Oh, I'm gonna train chaplains
yeah,
in the Air Force." I've never been in the Air Force. I've never been a chaplain.
sure, yeah, sure.
That's what he did, and
Yeah.
it was so kind of neat. Anyway,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
sorry.
And now really is third generation because he recruited you and Coach Castro, right?
Yep.
And then now Coach Castro's son-in-law
Yeah.
is the head coach. And so that's legacy.
Yes.
That's legacy. And that's what every leader's job and no small part is not just your own personal legacy, which is important, but what does your legacy look like in the lives of others? And so I get the privilege of training champions for Christ. And one of the things I love about my job is no day's the same. There's a lot of variety, and I get to hang out with really awesome people.
So 2023, you came to Liberty as the president. So what has been some challenges? What's amid some things that you've graduated here, you've been here a lot. What's some surprises? What's some challenges? What's some good successes? What's some
Yeah, anytime you take a new job, it's a challenge because people have expectations of you. And that they have a history there that you don't have, and you can't be a mind reader. And so there are people who, on day one, I got emails from people before I got here, and they told me exactly what to do. And I never met these people. And so everybody has
leadership? No,
everybody has
your underling.
no, exactly. Yeah, everybody has ideas about that, and so what I did is what I've done every job I've had when I've been in a leadership position. I read a book the first time I had a job where I was actually a leader of a significant sized organization. And the title of the book really says it all. It's the fear that every new leader has, even if the face says, "Oh, I'm ready for this." But the title of the book was this: "You're in charge. Now what?" And so, obviously, Liberty University has a storied history. Not all the story is awesome of the history, but that's true of any organization in history. And so the new leader comes in, and so based on I send a questionnaire out to all the key leaders. Here it was every dean, every vice president, and that was about 50 people. And so I sent them a pretty extensive questionnaire about, hey, how are things going? What's good? What's bad? What's ugly? What advice would you give the new guy? What do you hope I do? What are you afraid I might do? Those kinds of things. And then I asked the team here before I got here to put these together in big notebooks, which they did. And I studied those before I got here. So by the time I got here, I had a pretty good sense of where the university was, the good, bad, and the ugly. And then I met with every one of those individuals in my first few weeks, and so those meetings averaged about an hour and a half.
Okay.
And so I would say to Vicky, I'd love to help you unpack boxes, but I have a lot of work to do, and so God bless you, Vicky. And long story short, it became pretty obvious pretty quickly that the university was ready for a strategic planning process, which is what we wound up doing. And the university was ready for some focus on organizational culture. And I said, great, because those are probably things we would have gotten to eventually in a year or so. But it was obvious that we needed to start immediately. And so the leadership decision that I made early on was, although I first thought I might wait, I said no, waiting would be the wrong decision. So we started off from the get-go with strategic planning and with organizational culture. And really, those have kind of driven the things that we've done the last couple years. The thing that I've been surprised about, I had high expectations for Liberty. Those have been met and exceeded. The thing I've been surprised about, to some extent, was the high caliber of colleague that I get to work with every day. What I loved about the Air Force, especially my last few jobs, is some of the greatest Americans who have ever been Americans. I got to sit around the table with, generals and colonels and master sergeants and chief master sergeants. I got to sit around that table, and I would pinch myself, going, "God, I don't know how I got here, but thank you for this opportunity." And what those men and women do for the country as patriots is extraordinary. And here I've had much the same impression. The people here who are committed here, they're committed to the mission. They're committed to training champions for Christ. They do it as an extension of who they are in Christ as Christ followers. And that's been pretty amazing. So the people I get to hang out with, faculty, amazing human beings, staff, and the student body here they're cut above. They are high caliber. They're passionate about the things of God. They're passionate about the country. This is a God and country school, always has been, always will be. And the kind of student who comes here, who's attracted here, and then when they leave, they're even more God and country. So we're doing our job. So the people, the mission obviously is clear from the time that Dr. Falwell established the mission, and that's been amazing. But there's a sense on this campus of the presence of God that is unusual, unusually strong. I've been impressed by the way that Liberty University does spiritual development, the way they invest resources in terms of people and cash to make sure that on every hall there is an RA, yes, but there's also a resident shepherd, community group leaders. The amount of energy and resources that are invested in making sure that students here can hear from some of the world's greatest leaders in all kinds of ways. Charlie Kirk was to be here October 24th. And so just that caliber of people that they get to hang around with, and the facilities.
So as you as the president, and everything we do, you talked about the chaplaincy and recognizing value of studying the Bible.
Yeah.
We realize in Proverbs that it says, in a multitude of counselors, there's safety.
Sure.
And so now you have a cabinet.
Yep.
Lots of people in, one of my favorite quotes is from Thomas Sowell, where he says, if you care about somebody, you tell them the truth.
Yeah.
If you care about yourself, you tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah.
How do you use discernment and wisdom in your assembling your cabinet to make sure you have people that aren't going to just tell you what you want to hear,
Sure.
but absolutely tell you what is critically needed?
Yeah. Yeah. It is the most important thing a leader does. If you surround yourself with the yes people, then it's not going to go well. Or if you lead in such a way that they get the impression that, well, I have to tell him what he wants to hear, I'm going to get fired or this or that. It's not going to go well. It's going to catch up. It's going to catch up with you eventually. And it's also going to catch up with the team eventually.
With that, it reminded me one time I had an issue with the city of Lynchburg, and one of the employees, I just had I read Proverbs every day, and that one proverb said, when a servant hearkens to lies, when a leader hearkens to lies, all his servants are wicked.
Yeah.
And it goes exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, no, that's right, that's right. And so, there are, as I describe it, there are sort of two ways when you come into an organization. If you have the authority to make the kind of changes with respect to like a president's council or something, and so there's the football coach way and there's the military way. The football coach way is new football coach comes in and fires everybody and brings his own people. All right, that's one way. The military way is because you don't have no other option. You show up and you work with the people who are there until such time as either they leave because they get orders, or you get rid of them through long, painful process of getting rid of them in the military. And so I have always done the military way. All right, I show up and I say on day one, listen, I don't know you people. I've read some stuff about you, and so we're gonna see how this goes. And so for the time being, I'm gonna hope you trust me. I'm gonna trust you until your behavior says otherwise, and we're gonna get to know each other. And as long as you do things that are not immoral, unethical, illegal, or unbiblical, we're going to be fine. And we're going to get to know each other. Now, clearly, there are going to be occasions when your performance is going to be such that I'm going to have no other choice but to make a difference. But in that case, hopefully we never get there. But just know that, I'm looking at your performance and all that. So when I got here, there were lots of vice presidents, but no real central president's cabinet or president's council that was active. And so I said, "Listen, this is the way that I'm gonna do this. We're gonna look like most every other organization that I've ever been a part of, every military organization, every higher ed organization that I'm aware of. We're going to bring the key leaders around the table. And yes, I'll be the ultimate decider because that's my job. But we're going to make decisions that are data informed, and we're going to ask for God's help and wisdom and discernment to pick the thing that is going to be best to advance the mission of Liberty University and the kingdom of God." And so that's how we do it. So we reorganized within the first few weeks so that level of high caliber leaders who are experts in their field and who lead teams with experts in their field can have these conversations at the table. Ultimately, I make the decisions, but we do it in a collaborative way because my interest is the mission of Liberty University. It's nothing else. And fortunately, the people I get to work with have the same mindset.
You mentioned the beauty of Liberty is training young champions for Christ, which most of them in faculty and whatnot care about God and country.
Yes.
So Dr. Falwell, really helped or spearheaded the moral majority.
Yes.
Liberty University has been a political hub of conservative thought because of the fact, the reason we love conservative principles is because they're biblical. I think as you
That's right.
when you're talking about we have individual responsibility. Why? Because we're individually responsible to God.
That's right.
So we don't look to the state to solve our problems of our finances. We don't look to the state to solve the problems for our education or our family. How are we going to continue to push the political? Are you comfortable with pushing the political?
Yeah. Here's how I think we should think through it. These are 4 P's. The first P is we care about people because God cares about people. And so why are we conservatives? Because we believe, based on biblical principles and
Mountains of evidence that capitalism and free markets
and
work.
common sense, frankly, we believe that people matter. God made them in his image. He loves them more than we do. This flag, why does this flag exist? What does it stand for? I want to make sure that the flag stands for the things that I think it's always stood for. And it's our job to care about people. And we care about people. And because we care about people, we then look for principles. And those principles come from Scripture. Those who would say, well, what about separation of church and state? We say, you have no idea what you're talking about, because everybody comes to their politics with a worldview. And our founders had a worldview. Let's just mimic their worldview. How about that? Let's try that. That God has established. He's created us with inalienable rights that He has given us. He's given us these rights. What's government's job? Government does not give rights. If government gives rights, government can take rights away. But if God gives rights, and our founding documents say, and common sense says, the government's job is not to give rights. The government's job is to secure the rights that God has given. And so people matter. Principles inform our work with people. Well, principles are fine and dandy in a library, but they have to be put into practice. And so principles are put into practice by way of policies. Policies are put into practice by way of politics. People say, "Are you apolitical?" No, I'm not apolitical. I'm not going to be standing on a street corner necessarily, vying for one candidate or another. But you don't have to listen to me talk. But for about 30 seconds, to guess who I'm going to be voting for based on people, principles, policies, and politics. So why do we stand for these things? Because we care about the country, we care about people, and you have to stand up for right and righteousness, and that's what we do. That's why we do it.
So you came back to Liberty occasionally. You came for the graduation.
Yep.
You've been here. So some of the things, just let me help fill in a few of the gaps that you made.
Okay. Yeah.
You come and you see this school that is fantastic.
Yeah.
Great buildings, great.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it didn't get there just by happenstance. And
Right.
the Liberty's very growth was based on politics.
Mm.
So sometimes we think about the Supreme Court and the president and Congress and Senate, but local politics. Dr. Falwell endorsed me in 2004 to run for city council. Liberty, anytime Dr. Falwell wanted to build a new dorm, they had to go downtown and kiss the ring of the city.
Oh, okay.
They had to go through the planning director that was, pretty hateful
Yeah.
towards Dr. Falwell, even called him so publicly.
Sure.
Had to go through the technical review committee, had to go through the planning staff,
Mhm.
had to go through the planning commission,
Mhm.
had to go through the city council,
Yeah.
and paying the architects and unsure what the end result was going to be.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh, that's not a good thing. So we were outgunned. We were 5-2 conservatives to more, whatever, other side.
Less conservative.
I hate to say, I hate to just, when I talk, I usually talk very, I say what it is and liberal, but, I don't like to use pejoratives anymore. I try to be nice, but it's, we're conservative. So we had only two of us. But me and Turner Perro pushed for the institutional zoning.
Mhm.
And because Dr. Falwell recognized we don't have our property rights. We can't build without that.
Yeah.
We recognized conservative principles that said property rights matter.
Sure.
Freedom, the very nature.
Limited government.
Yeah. And allow and recognizing and how economics works. If Liberty can grow, that's beneficial for the city.
Yes.
And you have a lot of the blue-haired Karens saying, "Oh, we hate Liberty," but we pushed and we got the institutional zoning, and since then, Liberty's been able to expand.
It's a perfect illustration of how politics ought to work. Now, we are biblicists. So Romans 13, we fully believe that we submit to the governing authorities that God has established over us. But in our case,
it's a little different. We're not a king.
In our case,
we are the government. Actually,
we get to exercise our God-given rights that He's allowed us to have that most people in the world don't have.
Yeah.
We get to exercise our political weight so that we can establish policies based on principles to help people. And that's why we encourage at Liberty. We want people to go into politics. We have a school of government that is extraordinary. And the principles that they teach are exactly the ones that you were taught, back in the day. It's the ones we hope every student will be taught, every citizen will be taught, every citizen will abide by. But limited government is a good thing because the whole concept of our Republican structure, our Democratic and Republican structure as a republic, is that government happens by the consent of the governed. Well, we the people. I mean,
Yep.
it's everywhere you look. It's that. But if the old saying is, I think, true. Power can corrupt. It doesn't have to corrupt, but power can corrupt. And when it corrupts, it also can corrupt absolutely. And there are people who get into positions and they don't do the job that they actually are paid to do. They bring their own worldview into it and operate inconsistent with the way they should be operating.
Because it was done out of ego rather than like you or Moses were saying, "Hey, I'm unworthy."
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Moses was minding his own business until God said, "Yeah, you got to mind my business now."
And so with it's been for the Liberty's very growth, and it wasn't the big stuff. It wasn't the president.
Yeah,
It was
politics is local.
Another thing that has been very good is the fact that Liberty now also has their own precinct on campus.
Yes.
Again, I was in the minority, 5-2.
Yeah.
The first time I brought it up because I brought in facts.
Yeah.
That's the same thing that we did with the institutional zoning, which we eventually got to pass, I think unanimously, actually.
Mm-hmm.
But at first it was touch and go because they were saying, no, we don't like what Liberty stands for. Now they have that ability to build. Secondly, the precinct, at first I lost that vote, got crushed out. Nobody even wanted to second it. The second time I brought it up, I lost the vote. The third time I brought up the vote, passed 7-0.
Yeah.
And now Liberty's got the precinct on campus.
Sure.
And so it is critical, I think, that we keep on making sure that it's important to be involved. Like you mentioned, for God and country, these a lot of these kids are probably like your cadets in the Air Force.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I remember very vividly, and I was 18 years old. So I got to the Air Force Academy at 17. About a couple days after my 18th birthday, I go to my P.O. box and I do the combination and I open it up. And inside this P.O. box is my draft registration notification. And I thought, you already have me. Like, why am I having to do this? You already have me. You know where I am. And I'm wearing a uniform opening this thing. So, of course, I did that. And then when April comes around in that first year, any job I ever had before was a job where I worked for my dad. And I did whatever he told me to do. And he basically said, yeah, I'm going to feed you and let you sleep in my house. And so you do
That's
the work.
pay.
Yeah, there was no pay. I didn't have a job.
Compensation is a bed.
Yeah, you get to do this. And so in that first year, when April comes around, I remember he was a major, our adult supervision for our squadron. He comes around and says, every single one of you must make sure that you complete your taxes. I didn't know how to do that. But he helped all of us do the taxes, and so I've done it a bunch since then. And so part of my desire here is we want every Liberty University student to understand what being a good citizen means. What does it mean as a champion for Christ to be a good citizen? And if you don't vote, I mean, that's being a bad citizen. You need to vote. How you vote is up to you, but you need to be informed. And if you're an informed voter, it's not difficult these days to tell the positions of those who are running for office. It's very easy. And whereas when I first started voting, there was a lot of overlap between the various parties and all of that. The first time I voted was in 1984. All right. So, but there was a lot closer, but those two polls are way over here now. And so every individual, whether they admit it or not, votes in their own self-interest. Well, you need to understand what voting for these individuals are based on, again, politics and policies. What are the policies that they support? What principles are they based on? And are they going to be good or bad for people? And you are one of those people. And so we want to make sure that they vote. I think God for you and the city of Lynchburg for allowing us to have this, to have.
Didn't want it.
No, but
I had to use my wrestling. So I tried to apply what I've done at Liberty, where I studied finance
sure,
and
yeah,
I learned the facts.
yeah,
And I wrestled. So you don't quit. And Bob Good and I, our former congressman, he helped. We both helped to get wrestling back. And
yeah,
I had him on the other day, and we talked about those things. Those are qualities that
sure.
are kind of kept that tenacity.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, so I mean, it's good for the city of Lynchburg
fantastic.
that people want to vote.
Well, what's good for the city of Lynchburg is that we got the institutional zoning that Liberty could then
Yeah.
thrive. Oh, we didn't give it,
Absolutely.
just remove no chains.
Absolutely.
And now all the blue hairs that used to wag their fingers saying, "Oh, we don't like what they stand for," so much appreciate the end product.
Yeah.
They appreciate the fact that
Yeah.
you got such great kids that are waiting on them at Shakers.
Sure.
And smiling.
Oh,
Not
sure.
because they're just smiling, because
Yeah.
they're loved by God.
Yeah.
And they are there and they're happy. You look at the ability for the tax base to grow because all the growth of Liberty. Oh my goodness. You look at the
Absolutely.
cleanliness and the help with, Liberty sends and
Yeah.
it serves it. Oh my good. They
Yeah.
the sporting events, the high caliber ability to go to a play and productions
Yeah.
that you couldn't go to unless you wanted to go to Richmond before. Now it's here because
All of it.
all of that. And they're now like, oh, that's a good little product. I kind of like that.
Yeah, yeah, it's a great product. We hope it to be even greater. And again, we love Lynchburg. We love the history that we have here. We're grateful to the citizens of Lynchburg and surrounding, and we want to be really good neighbors. And the best way we can be good neighbors is to train champions for Christ who are going to make a difference here and are then going to go around the world and make a difference wherever they go. And that reflects as well on this region as it does the university.
So Liberty right now is in really good times. Fair to say.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think about the little circle that happens, that strong men make good times. Good times makes weak men.
yes,
How can we make sure, how are you planning on pushing off that inevitable cycle
yeah,
that says these weak men may come if we're just too, fat and sassy? How are we going to make sure that we're continuing in that mission?
yeah. The most important thing that we can do, and really the challenge that Liberty has is, who do we think has built the university? Do we think men and women have built it? Or do we think God has built it? And so if you are in good times, it is fairly common for you to go, well, hey, God, you know what? I don't need you right now. When I feel like I need you, I'll give you a call then. Well, God doesn't work that way, right? He demands glory. And so we are fully cognizant every second of every day that what we get to experience is evidence of the hand and the blessing of God. We talk often about this mountain is the result of one man's faith. One man. I don't know if Dr. Falwell ever wrestled, but he certainly could have.
He used to come to our matches, lift our heavyweight up that way.
Yeah, he's strong physically and otherwise, but he had that tenacity, and it was an evidence of his full confidence in God. And so when we walk around this campus, we think we look and see what God has done, and we never want to lose sight of the fact that God is still doing things. It's never going to be us, even if we think it might be. It's never going to be us. And the danger that if you in your personal life, in your professional life, in your institutional life, if you ever say to God, God, it's okay, I got this.
No.
And put yourself in the place of God, that's when Ichabod is written. And what we never want to have happen, for all the obvious reasons, is that we never want to depart from that mission. And we know that unless the Lord builds the house, those who build it labor in vain. Psalm 127:1. And so that's my job. My job is in no small part to ensure that we always keep our eyes on the Lord, that we bow our knee to Him, and everything that we do here must be to that end, or it will end.
Yeah. It's interesting how God uses different people. People that didn't want to do something but pulled in there.
Yeah.
I never even thought about politics. I'm a finance guy.
Yeah.
And when you look back on those things, you look and say, wow, that's kind of neat how God pulled that in. I see you at the field hockey games.
Yeah.
And with that, had God not put on Bob Goodnight's heart to try to push to get wrestling back at Liberty, they may never have had field hockey because the Title IX happened.
Yeah.
And there were more women than men.
Yeah.
And so they had to add 3 sports trying to keep wrestling.
Yeah.
And they added women's field hockey, which took second in the country. They had women's swimming and diving
Mm-hmm.
and women's lacrosse to add, hoping that would balance out that
Yeah.
Title IX. Still didn't do it, so they had to drop it. So the end result was, that's sad, but looking at it in hindsight, it's like, that is great. That's what God,
Yeah.
you did what we're called to do faithfully.
No doubt.
The end result is up to God.
Yeah. So field hockey currently ranked number 6 in the country.
I think they just got up to 5.
Okay, no,
Just the morning.
number
Yeah.
5 in the country.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And so, hey, by the way, let me just tell you how fantastic it is when I go to sporting events and I go to other things. You're there. The students see you. They see you and Vicky. They see you at these things. I know you love going and you'd love to be there all the time, but you got other things you got to do. But that is it's so encouraging and nice to see.
Well, thank you. It's such a vital part of the university. So field hockey number 5 in the country. Thank you. Swimming and diving. I forget the number of conference championships they won in a row consecutively. It's 12 or 15. And lacrosse last year, conference championship and made it to the NCAA's. And so soccer conference championship. All
this the Sweet 16.
first time, yeah, for the first time. And the platform that Coach Dot Richardson used, the way she used it to glorify God and to when people think of you, what you want them to think of, is excellence, but excellence because you're glorifying God through that excellence, and that's how you're doing it. So again, this is a marvelous place that plenty of people have poured their heart and soul into. The hand of God is on the university. I beg him to keep it there, and that we would do the things that we must do in obedience to him to advance the kingdom and advance the ball, so that this place is here for until the Lord returns, and we just keep doing what Dr. Falwell would have us do, and that's produce men and women who go impact all kinds of spheres of influence. We have the largest seminary in the country, but the vast majority of graduates from Liberty University aren't going on the mission field, certainly not as traditional missionaries, and they're not going into the pastorate. A bunch are, but they go into medicine and law and politics and engineering and you name it. They go the military. This is what Dr. Falwell had in mind, that we would impact every sphere of influence, because every sphere of influence is an opportunity for us to, again, serve God and serve country, this country that is a city on a hill and must continue to be. And if we lose sight of from where we came, I hate to think of the country that we will leave those who come behind us, which is why, with Charlie Kirk's death, this I think is a turning point. And what I hope happens is that all these motivated students all around the country who've been inspired by a man who was only 31, which meant he'd been doing this for when he started before he was was 18 years old. And so as Paul told Timothy, don't let your age, your chronological age, be an obstacle. Go. Do hard things and make a difference. You don't have to wait until you're a certain age or a certain rank or a certain wealth. Just go and do. And then, the Tertullian said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church, meaning that when someone of that kind of caliber is martyred, you have a choice to make. Either you're going to cower in fear, or as the the Tertullian quote says, and as Jesus said, unless a kernel of wheat falls to the ground and dies, then it doesn't grow and produces all kinds of seeds from that. This is what I hope happens. This is the opportunity. The greatest thing that this generation can do to honor the legacy of Charlie Kirk is to do the work that he was doing on behalf of the Lord Jesus Christ, on behalf of the country, on behalf of human flourishing, so that people can live the kind of life that God would have them to live.
I look back in time. I remember watching Dr. Falwell debate, some other, maybe squishy pastor.
Yeah.
And the squishy pastor would say, well, Jesus is my way to heaven.
Yeah.
And Dr. Falwell said, hey, he says, I am the way, the truth, and the life.
Yeah.
No man, and he would
Yeah.
say that boldly.
Yeah.
And I watched Charlie Kirk. I didn't follow him as much,
Sure.
I'm
Yeah.
older and I just doing
Yeah.
things and you see the things and so, but what an impact.
Yeah.
And what an ability of courage for these young kids to see. Yesterday in my class, I asked my students if they watched the memorial that where Christ is honored.
Yeah.
Not just a generalized concept. Christ is honored. I said, when you watch that, think about when that's going to be you. When that's your casket
Sure.
rolling down.
Yeah.
How do you want to be remembered?
Yeah.
Do you want to be remembered as someone that had courage and stood up for godly principles, that didn't cower in fear?
Yeah.
You don't have to be obtuse or obstinate by any means, but you need to be bold and be courageous.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll think about, you'll take what Stephen Covey said in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind.
That's right.
Think about your future.
Yeah.
You don't have to plan the funeral. We're not going to do it next Thursday, but
Yeah.
how do you want to be remembered?
Yeah, that's right. And so every day you have two choices. You can either be fearful or faithful. You have two choices. To your earlier point, God will allow you to choose which color socks you wear on any given day, but he will not allow you to choose the way of salvation because he's given one way.
Yeah.
And you said that so well. And so I appreciate what you stand for. I appreciate, you're a champion for Christ. You a proud product of our alma mater.
It's so encouraging to me, and I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the fact of the school that I came to go to back, 40 years ago that I love and still care about. We're in good hands. The students have a passion for Christ. Yeah, you think about Charlie Kirk's assassination immediately. I think of Genesis 50.
Yeah.
They meant it for evil. There was nothing nice about the guy pulling that trigger. He was doing it out of no kindness in his heart. He was doing it out of evil.
Yeah.
But man, did God turn that for good. Oh, we're just in this week. I mean, have you ever seen anything like that? You've been in the military.
I haven't.
How easy would it be for you now to be leading the chaplains? You wouldn't have to use that mountain of evidence. You would just say, yeah, you ready?
That's right. Yeah. And so this is a season that I hope continues, because Charlie was doing things in his generation that we would hope everyone would do. I mean, I want to do that in my generation. I'm of the same generation as you, but we want to do it in our generation, and students should be doing it in theirs. But this notion that you are going to do difficult things because you're living not just for this life, you're living for eternity. And beginning with the end in mind is a crucial way to do that. And the best way is to say to yourself, okay, if I'm going to have purpose and meaning, how am I going to know what that looks like? Well, I have a good suggestion for you, because God, the one who made you, he's given you this 3,000-year-old book, and everything you need to know is right here. And so follow the way of Christ, and you're going to leave the kind of legacy that on your deathbed is going to be exactly the thing that your family will treasure for the rest of their lives.
President Costin, my pleasure.
Pleasure's mine.
Thank you.
you.
God bless you.
Thank you.